Hello, our friends, Evolutionary Energy Arts family.
Welcome back again.
Yes, take two, take two.
Yes.
It's a little technical difficulties on the first take here. So, there's a lot to share, guys. And if you live in Taiwan, well, it says it's time to worry. You know, gosh, what type of preparations would I do if I was living in Taiwan besides maybe trying to get out of Taiwan?
Yeah, that would be the preparation I would be making.
Yeah, I would too, honestly. And just to be blunt and just share it as it is. These times are ramping up huge. And if you guys have been paying attention to all the videos that we've been putting out there, we've gotten a lot of messages from the galactics that something's coming to a head very, very shortly. And it doesn't appear like this particular timeline at this point is going to be averted. So it looks very, very likely. Taiwan needs to worry about American reliability, unlike Afghanistan, where the United States, this is a zero hedge, originally printed in the Epoch Times, has committed its forces for 2 decades. Taiwan has no U.S. forces, no assurance the U.S. will come to their defense if attacked by China. Well, if you listen to one of the top administration officials from this current administration, President number 46, we tend to go by 46 for the current, 45 for the last, just to try to avoid AI, I. and the way that they read things. Well, there was a senior official that basically was saying that, Taiwan is, it doesn't, they don't, the United States, this particular admin doesn't recognize its independence from China. Chinese state media outlet says the U.S. will abandon Taiwan too once war breaks out. And so, this is a big, big statement right there. They're counting on it. Many people may look that, this might embolden potential adversaries to the U.S. to go ahead and let's see what we could do in these times now that the U.S. has turned tail and ran away from Afghanistan. And that quote too, once a war breaks out, once, not like if, but they said once.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
China taunts Taiwan as America reels from the Afghan defeat. Once war comes, the island will collapse and the U.S. won't come to help. This is, again, statements coming out from the CCP itself. Big statements, right?
You really got to watch those vocabulary words too, like once, stuff like that.
Once, when.
Yep.
China conducts assault drills near Taiwan after provocations of U.S. increasing military and political ties with the island. If we can't read the writing on the wall, then it's just because we can't read.
Mm-hmm.
Bottom line.
I agree. That's a good one.
And it's just so obvious what's going on. This is not the same as in times past. We are really heading to a crescendo. The fat lady, she's about to sing.
She's so close to singing, man. She's like taking that deep breath in, waiting for that pause.
Yep, most definitely. On Tuesday, China's People's Liberation Army, the PLA, Eastern Theater Command conducted joint live fire drills involving forces of multiple services, including naval warships, anti-submarine aircraft, and fighter jets, around the southeast and southwest of the island of Taiwan. Citing the reason for the drills, the senior army colonel for Chinese Armed Forces, Shi Yi, explained that the exercises were to test the troops' capability and further safeguard China's sovereignty. And so, they slammed the U.S. for colluding with Taiwan. So you remember that first statement, the U.S. has no troops in Taiwan. Well, not according to this one U.S. senator. And read this headline, U.S. declaring war on China. Experts shocked as senator reveals 30,000 American troops are in Taiwan. In Taiwan already. Chinese experts said if this is true, It's a military invasion and occupation of China's Taiwan, equivalent of the US declaring war on China. And this is a senior US senator who is a member of the US Senate Select Committee on Intelligence. So this guy gets briefed on like all the big things, well, at least at his pay grade, which is more than the rest of Congress for the most part. So he should kind of know. As we see Senator John Cornyn, this tweet. U.S. troops today in South Korea, 28,000. Germany, 35,000. Japan, 50,000. Taiwan, 30,000. Africa, 7,000. And then Afghanistan, a month or two ago, 2,500. The point he was making was Afghanistan and the pullout from Afghanistan. Was he not supposed to give us the Taiwan numbers? Was it a Freudian slip? Was it a purposeful slip?
That's a good question. It's all about keeping us guessing and keeping us wondering, I feel.
Was this purposeful so that China feels that there's 30,000 troops there that aren't there? Or are there really 30,000 troops there? So we asked the Galactics, and they said,
yes, they're there.
They said, yes, they're there.
Mm-hmm.
So, that is interesting. And, in effect, China itself said that would be a declaration of war. And what we've gotten from the Galactics is they're very concerned every time we talk to them. And it shifts to talking about the geopolitical situation. That's the words that they say every time. We are very concerned with what's happening right now. And we had talked about the need for a timeline shift. It doesn't feel like that timeline is shifting. It feels like actually these powers that be are speeding things up. They're speeding everything up right now in order to make a certain timeline manifest. And as we've talked about the entire time that both of these channels have been around, there's a desire by certain powers to create three major conflagrations. And if you believe the words of a 33rd degree Mason, APIKE, who was a general in the Confederacy, made a statement in 1871 that, of course, people will try to say that it didn't really happen, but it was published in 1900 that he had made this statement before World War I came out in 1914. And then World War II started in 1939. And he stated there would be a need for 3 world wars. And the biggest tool, one of the biggest tools that is used is our religious ideologies and playing one side against the other. And so we've seen 2 great conflagrations. Are we about to see the third? As China has said, if this is true, then that's basically a declaration of war. And so if we have those troops there that are not supposed to be there, then we look at the lockdown that we're seeing in Australia, which a lot of people are just amazed at what we're seeing in Australia as to, and New Zealand, as to the level of lockdown and the amount of CASESs that they're given for the reason for their lockdown. Well, the question is that the real reason? Mm-hmm. Or is there something else going on? Are they saying it's X when maybe X is just a minor part and it's really all about Y and Z? We saw war games off the Australian coast that we didn't see, too typically. And there's all sorts of reports out there of basically military action going on in this tremendous lockdown that's going on, where people, see troops out in the streets, helicopters flying overhead. People are questioning what's going on. Why is it just like, is it really all about the plague upon the land, or is there something else going on that we don't know about?
Sure feels like something else going on that we don't necessarily know about or they don't want to admit. It really feels like they're just sort of trying to keep the lid on people until they can make some other bigger announcement.
Well, we're going to come back to that whole thing in a second. But you know who's not worried about it is the Taliban, because they've achieved their major objective, which was basically to get some bumper car time. Now, sorry everybody else, they are hogging the bumper cars. They won't come off
If they can master
the
the
play
bumper
area.
cars, we are in big trouble.
Yes, yeah, as you see, Taliban take control of a theme park in Kabul, and they're having a good old time.
Oh boy.
They're playing on the trampoline, frolicking. These are guys that have been repressed all their lives. They haven't been able to play bumper cars or bounce on a trampoline.
No wonder they're cranky.
Yeah. So as we see here, this administration and the leader of this, well, the apparent leader of this administration, wanted to leave Afghanistan, but generals and diplomats warned about the pullout. But he went ahead with it, as there were more pressing issues. And I've shared with you guys, I've gotten since 2016 what's going on here in the bigger picture of things. The guides told me the words they used were Trojan horse. Well, there's a lot of components to this Trojan horse. And, there was a general back in 2005, part of the C period. Oops, I forgot the P part. See, I try to avoid AI so much. C period, P period. There we go. That said, they don't have to build aircraft carriers. They're doing something else. And lo and behold, what do we see upon the land? We know what is upon the land, right? Mm-hmm. And that's perhaps stage one. There's many stages to what's going on. But the Trojan horse part is the fact that there are, well, what do you do when you are just so tired? You gotta go to SLEEP, right? That's the only way you're gonna not be tired again is if you get some sleep. What's the smallest component in the body? Well, cells, right? The body is made up of cells. Put those two words together, add an ER after that first word, and that's what's in place, ready to go, as we've been sharing. And we were talking about missing materials, happening and missing all over. Whether they find one, there's still dozens missing, and then hundreds missing from the former Soviet Union with the breakup. These materials that can emit harmful radiation. As you see, Biden administration plans to immediately house 30,000 plus Afghans at military bases in the US, authorizes 500 million to relocate refugees. The words that were used as we got our update from the GF, right, was that there are many of these sleepy cellular organisms inside this country and other countries. Think NATO, think allies. And there's many being added to that every single day. Think Southern BORDER, coming over in droves, coming in on planes and on helicopters. Many different nationalities. All of them are going to have a objective. And, we may see that manifest very shortly as part of that bigger Trojan horse. Now, the Trojan horse was actually a Greek horse. The Greeks were waging war against Troy. They couldn't get inside the gates. So what did they do? Well, they made like they were giving them a gift, a peace offering. That was a giant horse that only a Nephilim could play with. Mm-hmm. You'd have to be a giant to play with this giant horse. Mm-hmm. But however, it did house troops that in the middle of the night, when everybody was asleep, opened up the gates, and there you go. The fall of Troy. Troy burns. The great city Troy burning. That sounds a lot like Babylon the Great, does it not? Pentagon admits Taliban has billions in U.S. weapons. Billions. So the U.S. Treasury is freezing billions in Afghan reserves. depriving the Taliban of cash unless they sell the stuff they got for free.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's a crazy world that we are living in. And the leader of administration number 46, approval ratings are falling, falling, falling. And still, we don't believe the numbers in the first place. I mean, you know, some might, but we don't.
Mm-mm.
It's just, you can't trust numbers nowadays. Numbers are tricky things. You know, numbers, well, you know, here today, gone tomorrow.
Well, yeah, they're here to prove one thing, but then they can be used as manipulation devices too. And unless you're learning to follow your heart and follow your own intuition, you can be tricked by these numbers.
Outspoken Texas Governor Greg Abbott has confirmed that he's positive for the plague upon the land. Asymptomatic. And as you see this other word here as well. Yeah, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting, interesting, interesting. Everything that's going on right now. And the administration is going to extend travel mask mandate to January 2022. Flight attendants weary, exhausted, and forgotten. And yeah, you know, things go on and on and on. When will it ever end? Well, I mean, I would have to venture to guess by 2030 anyway.
I
I
would
know
hope
that's
so.
that's not the answer you guys want to hear. I know so many people want you want the white hats to come, you know, right around the corner. There they are. They're coming around the corner right now to save the day. You know, the white hats and you know, unfortunately we're in for a siege, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
And this is going to take a little while. Now is the time for us to be at tip-top preparations.
Yeah.
Now, I mean, everything is so very close. So very close. You know, a key date that we've been looking at is right around the 23rd of August. But, you know, things can kick off anytime before or after. You know, Edgar Casey's prophecies that now look to be coming true about all the earth changes, some of them he had dated to the 60s and 70s, others to, you know, right before the turn of the century. So many people wrote them all off because 20, 30, 40 years go by, nothing's really happening to that extent. And then all of a sudden, boom, it's all kind of coming off now, starting to look like he was right, but it might have been off by 50, 60 years, maybe even more.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, he did say that these things were going to be ongoing for generations. And that was perhaps viewing a timeline without artificial flavoring. That might be the key there as well, as Mother Nature doesn't want to punish anybody.
Mm-hmm.
And also, you know, the God with the big G is not about punishment, hellfire, and damnation. No, the ones that are telling those stories, those are the controllers because they rule by fear. And they rule by confining our ability to think clearly, reasonably, and to also, you know, go within. Going within without fluoridated water would be nice. You know, as people were buying Fijian water, thinking I'm paying $3 for this water, it better be good. It's got the highest amount of chlorine of any of them.
Yeah.
By the way, chlorine and fluoride, I should say fluoride with the pineal gland, but both of them are toxic. You know, and there's so many other toxic things that we're being exposed to all the time. And as we know, NAZI, Germany, in the concentration KAMPS, we'll spell it with a K, tricking that AI. What did they give to the people that were stuck inside it? Fluoridated water. Thank you, AMA.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Why? Because it makes people docile and it calcifies pineal glands. What a system we have in place in this world where you have bikini clad Bay Area women covered in scratches starting fires in Tahoe. What's up with that?
That's just so ridiculous. I mean, it's like they tell us anything. They're like, just tell the people anything. Just tell them anything. They'll believe anything at this point. They're so, gullible.
Yes, well, I do think that, you know, that might be a part of it. You could look at this different ways. You know, you could look at it and say bikini clad. starting fires, starting forward fires, wildfires, you might think, okay, this is just a BS tabloid thing. I'm not going to pay too much attention to it. Or you might look closer. But when you start looking at the bigger picture, we had been talking about these sleepy CELLSs that have been here for a generation, literally a generation or more. When we go to like the art of war, long-term preparation is key. And sometimes in the Chinese philosophy and way of looking at things, they're making plans for way out in the future. And of course, there are controllers that are controlling all these things from a very high position. But when we see this 43-year-old Fremont woman who's accused of starting a fire there, her name was Victoria Liu, dressed only in a bikini top and bottom, covered in scratches and soot. Who in their right mind, goes hiking through the woods, getting scratched up to start a forest fire? She admitted that she did. She had a controlled substance. Okay, so was she just somebody that was, you know, a USER, and this is really nothing to look at? Or is it something else? And how many of these wildfires, which we've seen so many of them, have been started by ARSON? Well, maybe some of these are actually PRE planned and part of the bigger picture.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, could very well be.
So again, guys, now is the time to have all preps in order. Be as self-sufficient as you possibly can. Over 3 years ago now, the government said you got to be ready for 6 months without the grid. That would be a good preparation to put as your baseline and work from there. As what we have gotten is the next 3 years or so, up until about 2025, 3 to 4 years, are going to be perhaps the most challenging humanity has seen in 6,000 years or more.
Mm-hmm.
So this is really a very, very challenging time. The bright side is that the system that we're in is going to collapse, and we will eventually start to manifest a heaven here on earth. That if the system was not in place, we would already see this. We would be seeing miracle after miracle right now. We would be seeing life expectancy go up. We would be enjoying an expansion of our consciousness and noticing things like, if I want to talk to my brother Joe, all I got to think is, Joe, call me. And then you know what? 9 times out of 10, Joe's going to give me a call and say, hey, what's up? Why was I thinking of you? This is part of these times. This is part of what happens when the information that's coming from source on cosmic rays and also on the rays of the sun itself, it's changing our DNA. It's making us more intuitive. There's declassified CIA and FBI documents that know this is going to be exactly what happens in this time. So, the emperor has no clothes. We are all starting to realize that.
Mm-hmm.
That's the bottom line here, guys. And it's just a matter of hanging on, working together, and pulling through together. So thank you all the ones that are supporting us on Patreon in these times of demonization on many different levels. We couldn't do it without you guys. Also on your support that we received from Ko-Fi, where you could do either a one-time support for the channel or monthly, just like Patreon. And we want to thank everybody that's having wonderful feedback they're giving us from Medicinal Foods, as these are great guys too. They're all about ascension and consciousness and raising vibes. Lots of great products here, and it does support the channel when you use the link that's on every video. As always, guys, stay prepared. Go to a new level. You got to have a spiritual plan and program. You have to be, making contact with the higher densities every single day. Whatever that looks like to you, maybe it's Qigong, maybe it's still meditation, maybe it's yoga, maybe it's going into prayer for a long period of time. Whatever you're comfortable with. But this is a way we could ground and root ourselves And I would recommend doing it in the morning and in the afternoon in these times. As you know, we had showed pictures of boy, dogs really shed a lot. They really shed a lot. Well, there's a lot of shedding going on out there right now.
It's that time of year.
And that shedding could get really uncomfortable. So the key to getting that shedding off of you, it's not a lint brush. It's actually grounding and rooting and getting in touch with the earth and sending anything that doesn't serve you and your highest purpose into the earth, because she's going to recycle it. She's ascending one way or another, with or without us. God bless and namaste.
Namaste.